All right, listeners, ready for a deep dive into a topic that's maybe a little bit unexpected.
Definitely a bit cheeky.
Yeah, we're talking buttock perception.
How people really look at butts.
Exactly. And we've got this really cool eye tracking study.
From aesthetic plastic surgery, no less?
Yeah, it really digs into how people's eyes move when they're, well, looking at other people's behinds.
Uncovering those subconscious preferences.
Yeah, and I, for one, am so curious to find out what these eye movements can tell us about what we find attractive.
Like, what are we really drawn to?
On a subconscious level.
Exactly.
So this study used some pretty high-pick eye tracking. Right.
Cutting edge stuff, yeah.
Data on the screen, numbers come alive. Male, female flows where the patterns thrive. Visual charts, public colors unify. Gender decoded, bringing truth to light. Small drum fill. We break it down, real talk. Trends unveiling facts from every block. Here's your insight, watch the data glide. Gender decoded, let the beats collide.
Today we're taking a deep dive into something, well, let's just say a little unexpected.
Unexpected is putting it mildly, I'd say.
Yeah, fair enough.
We're talking about buttocks.
Buttocks.
But specifically, and this is where it gets really interesting, how people really look at them.
Not just, what they say they like, but like where do their eyes actually go? It's
Exactly.
conscious stuff.
Precisely. And we've got this incredible eye tracking study that gives us a peek behind the curtain, so to speak.
This study's amazing.
Yeah, they used some high-tech equipment to follow people's eye movements as they looked at images of, well, you guessed it, female buttocks.
So it's like we're going to see those split-second reactions, those gut instincts, those things that reveal what really catches the eye.
And one of the most surprising things they found, and I got to say this one really threw me for a loop.
Okay, lay it on me.
Everyone, and I mean everyone, male, female, different ethnicities, they all fixated on the, well, butt crack.
The butt crack? Seriously?
Yeah, the butt crack.
I mean, it's not exactly the first thing that pops into my head when I think, attractive features.
Right. But the data's pretty clear.
So how long are we talking? Like, how long were people staring at,
Well, they measured what they call fixation time, basically how long your eyes stay locked on a specific spot.
Okay.
And for the butt crack, the average was 0.87 seconds.
0.87 seconds? That seems, I don't know, short.
It might not sound like much, but compared to other areas, it's significantly longer.
Okay, so there's definitely something going on there.
Oh, yeah.
But what is it? Is it some kind of, like, primal instinct?
Could be.
Or is it, like, cultural, maybe we're conditioned to find it interesting?
It's hard to say for sure, but, when you think about it, the butt crack has been around forever. In art, fashion, even humor.
That's true.
So maybe it's something about the shape or the way it emphasizes the curve.
Or the shadow, right? Like the play of light and shadow.
Exactly. We need more research to really nail it down, but it's a fascinating starting point.
It really is, because it makes you think, like, how much of what we find attractive is hardwired, like built into our DNA,
Right.
versus how much is shaped by our culture, our upbringing, all that stuff.
It's a nature versus nurture debate, and this study just adds another layer of complexity.
Speaking of differences, the study also looked at how men and women view buttocks, right? Did they find any, like, gender-specific patterns?
They did, and this is where it gets even more interesting.
Okay, hit me.
Men, on average, they spend a bit longer focused on the butt crack.
Really?
Yep.
So even more than the overall average?
Exactly, but when it came to the upper part of the buttocks, that nice rounded curve, women actually spent more time there.
So maybe men are more, like, focused on specific features?
Could be.
While women are taking in the whole picture?
It's a possibility. Could be that women are more attuned to the overall aesthetic, the harmony of proportions.
And men are just, like, laser focused.
Maybe, but, from an evolutionary standpoint, you'd think men would be more interested in the overall package, right? Like health and fertility and all that. Yeah, you'd think.
So maybe it's not as straightforward as it seems.
Definitely not. Attraction is incredibly complex, and there are probably tons of factors at play, from biology to personal experiences.
So it's not just, like, men like this, women like that.
Nope, it's way more nuanced than that.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've got men, we've got women. Did the study look at any other factors, like cultural background?
They did,
And
they found some subtle but pretty intriguing variations.
Like what?
Well, for example, Asian participants, they spent a bit more time looking at the lower inner part of the buttock compared to Caucasian participants.
Interesting. So could that be like a reflection of different beauty standards across cultures?
It's definitely possible what's considered attractive in one part of the world might not be in another.
Right, right.
But it's important to remember that there are physical variations between ethnicities, too.
Oh, good point.
So it's like, is it cultural? Is it anatomical? It's like a nature versus nurture puzzle all over again.
This is getting complicated.
Oh, it gets even more complicated, trust me.
It's amazing, like all the different things that could be affecting how we look at, a buttock.
Oh, yeah. It's a whole web of influences.
And a study, they didn't just stop there. They also looked at like how quickly people's eyes were drawn to different areas.
Right. They measured what they call the fastest fixation point.
Fastest fixation point.
Yeah, basically, it's the spot that grabs your attention first. Like, boom, that's where your eyes go.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
And guess what that was?
I have no idea. Tell me.
The lower inner part of the buttock, just above where it meets the thigh.
Huh. That specific spot.
Yep, that's the one.
I'm trying to picture, like, is there something about that area that's just naturally eye-catching?
Well, maybe it's the way the light hits it, creates a little shadow, or maybe it's how it kind of accentuates the overall shape. It's hard to say for sure.
Or maybe it's just, like, proximity. It's closer to the center of the image.
Could be a combination of things, but whatever the reason, it shows how fast our brains are working, even when we're not consciously aware of it.
It's like we're making these snap judgments about what we find visually appealing and we don't even realize it.
Exactly. It's all happening below the surface.
It's kind of freaky when you think about it.
It is. And speaking of freaky, this study, it had another finding that really blew my mind.
Okay, I'm ready. What is it?
The area that got the least attention.
The least attention.
You ready for this?
Hit me.
The thigh gap.
Wait, seriously? The thigh gap.
Yep, that's the one.
The thing that, like, magazines and social media have been obsessed with for years.
The one and only.
And people barely even looked at it.
Barely glanced at it. In fact, it took them the longest to even notice it out of all the areas.
That's insane. I mean, think about all the pressure women face to have that perfect thigh gap.
Right, and this study's suggesting that it might not even be something that people are consciously drawn to.
It makes you wonder how much of what we consider attractive is actually just, media hype.
A lot of it,
It's like we're being told what to find attractive, but our subconscious might have totally different ideas.
And it highlights the limitations of relying on self-reported data when you're studying something like attraction. Because people might not even be aware of what their eyes are actually doing.
So we can't just ask people what they find attractive because they might not even know themselves.
Exactly. Our conscious minds and our subconscious minds, they could be telling two completely different stories.
Wow, this is like mind-blowing stuff.
I know, right?
Okay, so we've talked about where people look, how quickly they look, the differences between men and women cultures. But there's one thing I'm still curious about.
What's that?
The underwear factor.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
The study used images of models wearing underwear, specifically black thongs, right?
Right.
So could that have, skewed the results?
It's definitely a possibility. And it's a good reminder that even scientific studies, they have their limitations.
Right.
It's possible that the underwear, especially a style that, accentuates certain features, it could have played a role in how people looked at the images.
So maybe they were looking at the buttocks, but their eyes were kind of drawn to the underwear, how it, interacted with the body.
Exactly.
Like we can't isolate the variables completely.
Nope, it's all interconnected.
It'd be interesting to see a similar study, but with images that don't have any underwear, just to see how that changes things.
Oh, totally. That would be fascinating.
And it makes you think, how much does clothing in general influence what we focus on visually? Do we even realize how much our attention is being directed by what people are wearing?
It's a really good question, and it's probably a bigger influence than we realize.
It's like this whole other layer of subconscious manipulation almost.
And speaking of subconscious, it's important to remember that longer fixation time, it doesn't automatically mean more attractive.
Oh, that's a good point.
It could be curiosity, surprise, even aversion, something that makes you look away, but then you keep coming back.
So it's not just about where we look, but why we look, and those reasons could be different for everyone.
Exactly. It adds a whole other level of complexity.
It's like we're peeling back the layers of an onion, and every layer reveals something new and surprising.
That's a great analogy. I like that.
It's all about the layers, baby.
Layers of the subconscious and buttocks.
Buttocks. Can't forget the buttocks. This has been, wow, a lot to think about.
Yeah, it's pretty wild, isn't it?
It really makes you realize how much we don't know about, ourselves and our own minds.
Totally, we're these walking mysteries.
Buttocks and mysteries, who knew they went together so well?
Right, but seriously, this is just the tip of the iceberg.
There's so much more to learn about, how our brains work and how we perceive the world.
Exactly, and it's not just about buttocks either. This applies to everything we see, how we judge beauty, how we interact with each other. It's all connected.
So the way we look at a face, a body, a landscape, a piece of art, It's all filtered through these subconscious lenses.
Exactly. Lenses that are shaped by our biology, our culture, our personal experiences, everything.
And we're not even aware of it most of the time.
Nope. It's all happening behind the scenes in the deep recesses of our minds.
It's kind of freaky, but also kind of cool.
I agree. It's like we have all these hidden biases and preferences that we don't even know about.
So what do we do with that information? Like, how do we change those biases if we don't even know they're there?
Well, I think the first step is awareness. Just acknowledging that these biases exist and that they can influence our perceptions and our behavior.
Okay, awareness, check.
And then from there, it's about being more mindful, questioning our assumptions, challenging those ingrained beliefs that might not actually be true.
So, like, next time I see a magazine cover with, a model with the perfect body, I should stop and think, wait a minute, is this really what I find attractive? Or am I just being manipulated by the media?
Exactly. It's about taking back control of your own visual language, deciding for yourself what you find beautiful, what captures your attention, what makes you feel good.
And maybe being a little more forgiving of ourselves and others when we don't fit into those narrow societal ideals.
Absolutely. Diversity is beautiful both in terms of physical appearance and in terms of the way we perceive the world.
I like that, embracing the diversity of beauty.
Right. It's about celebrating the uniqueness of each individual and recognizing that there's no one-size-fits-all definition of what's attractive.
This deep dive has definitely given me a lot to think about.
Me too. It's been a real eye-opener, no pun intended.
Huh, I see what you did there.
But in all seriousness, I think the takeaway here is to be curious, keep exploring, and don't be afraid to challenge your own perceptions.
Well said. And with that, I think we'll wrap up our exploration of buttock perception.
It's been a pleasure diving deep with you.
Likewise, and to everyone listening, thanks for joining us. And remember, go forth and observe, discreetly, of course.
And mindfully.
And mindfully, that's important. All right, until next time, stay curious.